Wait. Here we go. Okay. No problem. I'll pretend I'm screaming at my son and daughter. I haven't had to do that in a long time. Okay. Hi, everybody. All right, let's everybody settle down now, okay? Because there are a lot of people, okay? And if someone could close the door, that would be great. So for the few people who might not know who I am, my name's Tony Greenberg. I'm one of the members. What are you doing? You're staring.
They don't want to see your stomach.
Oh, okay, then I'll sit. All right.
Great. Welcome to Beth Israel, Rabbi Goldman. This is us.
Okay.
Okay.
Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, I don't want them looking at my stomach. I got those 10 COVID pounds to lose like half the world. Okay, so we're here. I'm Tony Greenberg. I'm one of the members of the Rabbi Search Committee. Most of you know me. I've been coming to Beth Israel forever and have been very involved. And it's really a pleasure to welcome Rabbi Goldman, her whole family. Some of you got to meet her children, her partner, Kieran Kiley. And this is an opportunity to learn more and different sorts of things. I'm going to repeat something. There's still other opportunities. Rabbi Goldman's going to be here tonight for Havdalah and tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock for Minyan. So we have around 45 minutes or so for questions. The place will not, evaporate if we go a little bit longer, but, we're going to try to stay to that. So many of you will have many questions. So something we all learned back in kindergarten, as they say, is we're all going to share. So everyone's going to ask one question, whoever wants to ask. And if there's time, we'll come back to you, okay? Because there are a lot of people, Zoom people you can't see. We probably have 60 people here, so we have a big crowd. So anyway, but to get things started, everyone knows that I like to do a little icebreaker. Okay, everybody ready? To get to know a little, what is that? Yeah, if we could silence phones, that would be absolutely terrific, okay? All right, so Rabbi Goldman, this is the important things we're gonna learn about you today. It's real quick, it's gonna take 60 seconds.
Okay.
I'm gonna give you 2 words and you gotta choose one from each pair. Ready?
Okay.
Okay, and this is not a Talmudical class, it's just boom, boom. Ready? Okay, let's go.
Oh, but now we're
Yeah, they'll look at our bellies. Who cares? Well, it'll be more fun. Ready?
Yes.
Olives, no olives.
Olives.
Early bird, night owl.
Night owl.
Beach, mountains.
Beach.
Okay, Queen Esther, Vashti.
Vashti.
Okay. Bluey, Paw Patrol.
Bluey.
Okay, Super Bowl, March Madness.
March Madness.
Okay, yeah. One big present, 8 small ones.
One big.
Katy Perry, Pink.
Oh, I don't care. Pink. Sorry.
Okay. Call, text.
Call.
Okay, and here is the biggest thing in all of Judaism. Ready? This is your defining moment. Hamantashen Latkes.
Latkes.
Yay! Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so now we're all relaxed and all in good mood. So I have no favorites here. We're just gonna start in the middle and go this way, and then we're gonna go this way. So who has the first question? What? What's the matter? I'll sit down. Russ Kaufman. Okay, let me repeat the question. Question from Russ. Tell us about your smicha, where you studied and so on.
So I studied at the Reconstructionist Rabbinical College in Philadelphia, which was and is the best place for me. But part of what I was really attracted to initially at RRC was that for your Israel year, you could plan your own curriculum of study. You would go in your middle years, and whatever year you went, you just had to fix the, do the points, the requirements for that year, but you could do it in however you chose to do it. And so I was excited by that because I had already lived in Israel twice before, once with Jesse Braitman when we were 16 and 18, and once right before I went to rabbinical school, which is how I learned of this. I said, I'm going to go to Israel, I'm going to go to Jerusalem, I'm going to do immersive Hebrew study, and I'm going to make my peace with the Middle East. And I did so on both fronts, did Ulpan 5 hours a day. And so then I learned that I could go to this particular rabbinical school and come back and do whatever I wanted. And I was very inspired by someone who was further along in the program who studied at a variety of institutions, so wasn't bound to any one place. And when I went back, that's exactly what I did. So I took a Parsha Nut class with the cohort of JTS that was there that year. I took a Psalms class at the conservative yeshiva, which is where the Ziegler rabbinical students were studying. And the best thing for me that I did was I studied from noon to 6 p.m. on Wednesdays in a Dati Chiloni Beit Midrash with Israelis, completely in Hebrew. I was the only non-Sabra in the room. And I just, listened and learned and got more confident and spoke. I gave a 15-minute presentation in Hebrew at the end of that process. And it was an incredible, all of the classes I took were incredible, but that class specifically, the group was really going into our immigration stories of how people had gotten to Israel. And it started with the Mizrahi Jewish experience because they had acknowledged that in their own schooling, they had heard the Ashkenazi version more. But then after we, looked at Moroccan, immigration and other Sephardi communities, we looped back and people told their Holocaust stories. And it was a group where many were second generation and some third generation survivors. And so it was at that moment where I was listening to these stories and I said, this is really important. I want to repeat back to somebody in English to make sure that I understood this story. And I did. And the person said, I don't even know why you're doing this, because you absolutely understood the story. Your Hebrew is better than my English, which is, I know, I still don't think it was true, but it was a nice thing to say. So I guess that's one piece.
Thank you. Sandy.
Could you describe, compare, contrast Reconstructionism with conservative, and like how would one play against the other, in your teachings?
The question is compare, contrast Reconstructionists and conservative Judaism.
So Reconstructionism began by Rabbi Mordechai Kaplan. He taught at the Jewish Theological Seminary for over 40 years. And he positioned himself ideologically on the left wing of the conservative movement. He never wanted to start another movement. He said, we have too many movements already. It was his son-in-law who was his chief disciple, and that generation of his disciples who said, your ideas are not gonna take off unless we establish a rabbinical school. So they did so in the late 60s in Philadelphia. But I would say that the debates that Kaplan was having ideologically with the conservative movement we have evolved together really, I would say we've took Kaplan's ideas, and some of them within the conservative movement, and others of them, we took the ideas, but we didn't go as far as he was, as he was really radical. So the things that he was really radical on was actually changing the words of liturgy. He said, he didn't believe in the concept of chosen, that the Jews were chosen. He said special, but not chosen, or other people said that. And so he changed liturgy to reflect that, because he said, I want to say in Hebrew what I believe in English, and I don't want to be saying Hebrew that I don't believe. So I am also a student of Midrash, and so I believe everything that I'm saying in Hebrew. It may not be the pshat, it may not be the basic understanding. So I am a person of the world, so I believe in the gifts of all different peoples. And so when I say, Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim, God chose us from all the other nations, which is in our Torah blessing. I say that knowing that God chose us to publicize Torah throughout the world. And so that is how I understand that we are the chosen people, and that's our job. And so in that instance, Kaplan changed the Torah blessings. And so this morning, I did not. I have my career has actually almost entirely been in conservative spaces. So I started as assistant rabbi in Indianapolis of a dual affiliated conservative and Reconstructionist congregation, which is not that common, but this was a conservative congregation from the moment that the two previous congregations merged in 1927. The first rabbi was Rabbi Milton Steinberg before he moved to Park Avenue Synagogue in New York City. And he's the author of As a Driven Leaf, which I talked about with folks last night. So when the Reconstructionist movement decided to be a movement, all of the rabbis in Indianapolis were students of Kaplan. So they said, we're going to support this movement and we're going to dual affiliate. And the congregation has been dual ever since. Now, I will tell you that at this point, I would say that the congregation is 90% conservative and 10% Reconstructionist. So that was sort of, I would say, my bridge of being in a conservative congregation and learning maybe some of the cultural pieces of conservative Judaism that I maybe hadn't gotten, and then, continued on. And the congregation that I'm in now was originally Orthodox, affiliated conservative, is still very much conservative in tone and practice, and but is not part of the USCJ, but is a conservative congregation. So, and also I'll say I was taught to be a rabbi for the Jews. So not Reconstructionist Jews, but for the people, all of us.
I was just wondering, halakhically, are there any differences?
So the difference, and maybe this is, I hope it doesn't make people nervous, but the difference is that the Reconstructionist movement doesn't have halakha as binding, whereas the conservative movement does. So, but I learned, I took the codes classes, I took the classes to learn how halakha is developed. And I feel very comfortable being the Mara Da'atra, being the master of the place, being the halachic decisor for a community. And the way that I understand that, I think every good rabbi makes any halachic decisions, if they're complicated, in consultation with their community. So as a leader, I'm not gonna change anything. First of all, immediately, we got to get to know each other, right? And then, it's not my show. I'm leading within a community.
Thank you. Okay, anybody else on this side have a question? Go ahead.
The job of a rabbi is very multifaceted. You have counseling, you have teaching, whatever. If I said, The job is yours to define. How much roughly percentage time would you prefer to spend on different aspects of the job? It doesn't have to answer 100, it doesn't have to be 100%, it's not a math question. Just roughly.
Okay, so let me repeat it. Jerry asked that the job of the rabbi is multifaceted, leading services, counseling, all sorts of different things. And in your mind, how would you see the percentages? He also said it doesn't have to add up to 100%.
Right, so if you're superhuman, it could be 120%.
Right.
Right. Right, and I love this repeating because it gives me time to think. Yeah. So, I have already been in this rhythm. This is my 7th year of being a pulpit rabbi. So I'm starting to see a rhythm, which is, unless there's an emergency, I try to take Sunday afternoon and Monday to be with my family. And then, there's a teaching when Israel went into the land, the very first thing that happened was a Shemitah year. So, that's why I start with the rest. And then Tuesdays is a day to catch up on email, to meet with the staff, to get myself back into the week. Hopefully I would have actually looked at the Torah portion on Sunday, but then to really do some study to be able to write my sermon. Wednesday, write my sermon, visit one-on-one visits with folks, either that are, coffee, get to know you, or visiting hospital, doing Bikur Cholim. Wednesday evenings at my current congregation is religious school. So interfacing with religious school families and teaching with the students. Thursday could be a mix of meetings, out in the community with congregants, or study if I need a little more study time. Friday, I don't schedule anything because I do everything that comes up at the last minute before Shabbat, and then Shabbat.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question here. I don't even understand what it is, okay?
Okay.
So I think it's a generational thing.
Okay.
Okay, ready? What does radical accessibility mean to you, and what is its place in a synagogue community?
Okay, I do understand the question. Right. So radical accessibility, I can start by saying that we are here doing it, or having our first steps in doing it, which is that we have a Zoom set up. We are making it possible for people who are at home for whatever reason that they are at home to be able to access this Jewish community in the way that they can. So I think that the conversation of radical accessibility is, are we welcoming people with disabilities and making it possible for them to be in the room? And I actually learned from a different community recently. So it's more than just the ramp into the room, the listening devices. It is also, are we, when someone tells us that their preferred gender pronouns are different than we would have assumed, are we using them? And are we trying to use them? And when we make a mistake, we say, oops, and we move on. So radical accessibility, allowing, not asking people to only be Jewish in this space. They're allowed to be Jewish and all of the other identities that they bring into the room. Yeah.
Hey, you were just talking about different identities. What about neurodivergence? I mean, 30 years ago, nobody heard of neurodivergence such as autism or ADD, and now, there's actually autistic people who are members of this congregation, and it's more than just knowing about who they are. It's like, how would you feel about accepting them? Because I know of one synagogue in Baltimore in which I do not feel autistic people are very accepted. So what is your philosophy about that?
Let me repeat it. I'm going to condense, if that's okay, that Rabbi Goldman was talking about, recognizing differences and making things accessible. And the question has specifically to do with people who are on the autism spectrum, and would they feel welcome? Sorry, I'll sit down. Standing.
So I think that, I still have a lot to learn in accepting all of our neurodivergent folks. And I think that I would think about it in the same way that people learn and process information in a variety of different ways. The debate that I always have with my partner, I'm an auditory learner. So actually, when folks are sitting in the congregation, if you're loud, I can hear you. But my partner, if we're not making eye contact when I ask her to do something, she hasn't heard. And actually, in the phone call or text, she would prefer to get to have it written, because if she sees something written, she knows. Whereas I don't want to read the paper. I just tell me. So I think that we are learning all the time more and more about everybody. And my philosophy would be to be always open to the conversation. And I hope that I can live up to that.
Yeah, there are a lot of people, I think, that are know-it-alls about autism, and they just they don't know anything. It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. So the fact that you're open to learning, I think is very important.
Thank you.
Michael.
As the Mara doctor, the cyber Jewish welfare organization, you have to go to a basis. So I have a couple of questions to deal with what basis you would go to make those decisions.
Mhm.
Number one, do you believe in Torah Messina, or what does Torah Messina mean from the Torah language? Number two, how does that relate to traditional Jewish law? Number three, how does that relate to Talmud when you go to religious scene?
Okay, so I'm gonna stay in my seat, thank you. Okay. So I think the question is about your approach to being the Maradatra, meaning the head person of the Bima, so to speak. That's a good translation, how it relates to Talmud and other things. Okay, so now we're gonna get the answer. Thank you.
Right. So Torah Sinai means that Torah came from Sinai, and that's the literal translation. And the way that it is often understood is God spoke the Torah and Moses wrote it down. And so I'll answer a question with a story in a good rabbinic fashion, which is that when I'm davening, I absolutely feel that I am praying to God. And I have an idea of God, which is actually, I would say, probably maybe more of a childlike understanding of God, of there's an actual being in the sky who I am speaking directly to, and this being, as Rabbi Rachel Adler says, God comes to us in a body, in a story. So we understand God through story, and stories have characters, and characters have arms and legs and faces and mouths. So when I'm davening, I am praying to that idea of God. But if you, I guess, woke me up in the middle of the night and said, is that the type of God that you believe in? I would say, no, I think more of God as being a force, an energy that connects us, that moves people to make the world a better place. I believe that there is, God, and that our responsibility is to help heal the world. We're supposed to serve God in every moment, but how do we even know how to do that? We serve the person who is right in front of us. This comes from Emmanuel Levinas, a major Jewish philosopher of France, lived through the Holocaust. And so he talks about God as being the other, the big O, other. And the only way that we can serve God in every moment is by taking care of the needs of the people who are in front of us, everybody is a little O other. Everybody, you know, the Hasidic idea of there's a God spark within all of us, within all things. So I got far afield, my Talmud class, authority for making halakhic decisions. The Torah is important. Whether I believe that God spoke and Moses wrote it down, or I believe that the Jewish people collected these stories and have called them holy for thousands and thousands of years, and we've looked at them and returned to them and returned to them. Either way, Torah is the first text, and then Mishnah and Talmud are the next texts to look at. And then continuing on Jewish history, how the Torah has been interpreted first in Talmud and then later in the codes, which then got collected in the Shulchan Aruch and all of the other compendiums of Jewish law. That, you know, I always love when I can teach a class when I can hit each historical level and different texts from different generations. So that's my answer. Thank you.
Phil,
When you were talking earlier about halakha, you talked about community.
Mhm.
The conservative movement has the Committee of Law and Standards.
Yes.
Okay, which is supposed to define Jewish law for the conservative movement. How do you relate to that organization?
So I'm glad that you said that, because I thought it when the question was being asked, but then I didn't say it out loud. I love reading the Chuvot. They are really fun. So the answers, the responses, they're really fun for, you know, I mean, I think they're fun for some people in the room. They're really fun for rabbis to read and to think about all the different sources that are coming in. The issue is that you get to the end of every important tshuva and it's set and it has the majority opinion, the minority opinion, and then it says the rabbi of the congregation, you make the decision that you think is best for your community. And so it's not as clear cut as you would think. You know, you get a tshuva, you get a response, you get an answer, and then it says, okay, read all of this, digest it, understand it, and then make the best decision for your community. And so that's what I would endeavor to do.
Howard Berkman.
This is about Israel. You mentioned earlier having had a chance to make peace with the Middle East,
Yes.
but now is a really critical time between the judicial issues and settlements issues. Last week we had a Jewish council speaker say that you can be critical of Israel's policies without being anti-Semitic. I'd like to know how you, number one, how you personally feel about it, and how important you feel this is to relating to the congregation.
Okay, so the question is about Israel, and I'm going to try to summarize it. Feelings about Israel, and the people say you can not be supportive of some of Israel's policies and not be anti-Semitic, and how Rabbi Goldman feels about Israel.
Oh, just an easy question.
Have a minute to answer.
Right, 1 minute, 1 minute. I love Israel. I love being there and living there. I love many things about Israel, and there are things that I am critical about in the same way that I love being an American and living here. And there are things that I'm critical about our country. So I think that it's important for me to be a voice. I also think that we're starting a relationship. And so you don't start with the hardest topics first. So I think, you know, I would say that what's happening right now is very concerning to me. And it's concerning to me as a non-Orthodox Jew, and what is going to be the future for us in Israel. But I also think that I'm gonna speak when asked on this topic, but not speak when not asked, at least initially.
To the congregation.
Right, right. So I mean, I'll say what I just said, which is, it's something to watch, and I think all of us are smart folks who are watching. But it's a conversation that I'd rather have one-on-one in small groups in a situation where people can respond, as opposed to perhaps a sermon, which is I'm saying, and people have things that they want to respond, but that it's not necessarily a forum for them to respond. I don't want to put people in that position.
We're gonna ask Ted, what? David, yes. Great.
I wanted to sort of touch on the elephant in the room, or one of the elephants. There are a lot of elephants in the room. But people have been sort of dancing around the whole issue of halakha and where Rabbi Goldman stands on that and so on and so forth. And now I'm speaking as chairman, co-chair of the Rabbi Search Committee. When we got our waiver to consider rabbis who were not part of the RA, we signed a document with the RA. And in it, there's a one-page extensive document that says any rabbi who comes to our congregation has to agree to abide by all the rules and regulations on halakha and so on and so forth of the rabbinical assembly. And that's one of the first things we discussed with Rabbi Goldman. And with that, I will turn it back to her.
Okay, so if people didn't hear,
Yes.
so David Braitman, who's chair of the co-chair, excuse me, and then Heidi. Now I'm in trouble. One of the chairs of the Rabbi Search Committee said that most of the congregants were aware that we opened up applications to people who were not conservative rabbis, that could be Reconstructionist Reform, and that there is a document that anyone who came here would have to sign and agree to abide by the precepts of the conservative movement. So that should answer that.
She meant when Rabbi Goldman might want to speak to that.
Right. So the big issues were, Shabbat practice, kashrut practice, and would I perform intermarriages? And so I would say that, my experience of living and working in Indianapolis, I've already lived in a context where I agreed to abide by the rules of the conservative movement. And so I think that that's, these are live conversations, and it's for the movement to have. And should I be here as a rabbi, I would be part of those conversations from within the movement.
Right, this is from Ted Gross. We're getting a little
Oh,
different,
good, okay.
not as serious maybe.
Okay.
How would you change the morning Shabbat service to increase congregant participation?
All right. Well, so I actually got to sit down with Rabbi Goldstein yesterday, and we had a very nice conversation, and he told me of an idea which I guess is totally normal for you all, but I had never heard it and I loved it, which is to do it in reverse.
Yeah.
So to start at the end with Musaf, and to go in reverse, so that at the end of the morning, you're in Psukei de Zimra and doing your Chod HaShachar. So that is my favorite. I mean, I said, every time I'm thinking about something, it's my favorite. But I love all the songs that you can do in Psukei de Zimra. And so that, I'm sad that we do it early in the morning quickly when not as many people are here. But I think that that increasing participation has to happen on many levels, and it has to happen with me in partnership with the community. So we can do a variety. We can have a variety of ideas. I also talked to Rabbi Ezring yesterday, and he told me about some of the ideas that he was excited about Friday night services and Shabbat dinner in different locations around town and people's homes. I'm very excited about all of those ideas. And I think my training as a community organizer always, there are a couple of principles. One is that anything that I'm doing, I need to have partnership with lay leaders in the community. And two, I need to Well, yeah, partnership. That's what I'm thinking about right now. Yeah. We have to do it together. And I'm not tied to the building all the time.
Someone else had, go ahead, Larry.
Thank you for coming, Rabbi. Two questions. First is, what ideas do you have to help our congregation with a problem of dwindling membership? And second question is, who's going to win the double NCAA?
Okay, so I'll try to translate that question. Nobody cares who's gonna win March Madness because Duke is out of it, so it really doesn't matter. Okay, so I took care of that. You don't mind.
No, that's okay.
Okay, all right, so the other question is, in all seriousness, is what ideas does Rabbi Goldman have about increasing membership in the synagogue?
So the first thing that I would say, and this is for everybody, we are all coming out of COVID. And so the first thing is us meeting each other again and getting back into the rhythm of seeing each other again in person if we can. And we have so much practice with having a virtual element that is with us, and we'll continue to learn and grow. I think that as a new rabbi coming in, the first thing that I would do is meeting everybody who's here and seeing who you are and what you're about and what ideas you have. And then I will have then crowdsourced from a lot of different folks. And then in a second year, a third year, we can start to experiment with those ideas. And I say experiment because, as we know from design thinking principles, you just try a whole bunch of things. A lot of things fail, and then you refine the stuff that works. And so you have to be okay with trying something and oop, doesn't work, so you try something else. And I think that my job is to listen to the folks, to create a really good program, to create something compelling that people want to come to. First of all, the people who are already members. And then I like to say every single person in a community is on the membership committee. When you meet someone who you discover that they may be thinking, you in a not overbearing way, you invite them and you accompany them and you welcome them in. And it's often a slow process, but I think that it, I have seen now in a couple different communities that I've lived and worked in that, there can be a steady increase. So that's what I've seen.
Thank you. Somebody here, Hetty had a question.
Somebody came up to me at lunch and asked me to ask why Baltimore? So I've been in Philadelphia for a while.
Okay, so the question is, why Baltimore?
So this was the first question that David Reitman asked on Zoom in our very first meeting. And I said, well, because I know some kids from Habonim who grew up in Owings Mills, grew up in Baltimore. And so I can imagine myself raising my kids here. I'm not going to say their names because it was 20 years ago. Right. So then he said, perhaps my son, Jesse. So yes, I can imagine, my family can imagine living in this city. It's a dynamic city with a lot of really great Jewish diversity and a lot of secular diversity. We took a tour of the JCC yesterday, and I knew that, I knew of the JCC. So, like a place, a preschool for my kids, a livable city, Jewish infrastructure. I'm from Chicago, very, very proud. But in the Philly, Baltimore, I don't have as much of a, skin in the game of those two, that rivalry. I'm happy to be.
Okay, Eliza.
So taking it one step further, why Beth Israel?
Okay. So the next question is, we first Why Baltimore? Why Beth Israel?
Well, so that I really feel like I could truly answer now that I'm here and meeting folks, which is that I can see that you're a smart, engaged crowd. You like to sing. I like to sing. I know that, you know, there are questions of, do we have enough people? But from my travels, there are a lot of people who are regulars here. It's a strength. And so I would love to lead and preach to a room, you know, people in the room, people on Zoom. And I'm getting to know, so I feel like I'm learning more and more why Beth Israel.
Someone here. Mira.
Hi, Rabbi. Thanks for being here with us. One of the things that brought my family to this congregation was the Hebrew school, which at the time that we came was just big and amazing and gave full education. Even after kids graduated, they had opportunities to do Milo, which my kids did. And I wonder what your thoughts are about possibly getting back to that kind of situation.
Okay, so the question from Mira is about the Hebrew school. She commented that was a big draw to her, that her children all went to Hebrew school here, and what Rabbi Goldman's thoughts would be about that.
So absolutely, and this is a question that I'm personally invested in all the questions, but you know, I have young kids, and so I am very much invested in seeing a strong religious school. And I have met and talked with Rick, so I think that you know, over there, yeah, you're on the right track. And I would be happy, you know, for us to work together and to you know, build out the program. And again, as I'm on the job market, I am reading, you know, lots and lots of different applications, and everybody's pretty much in the same boat. So it's not like somebody else has the secret answer and we need to just find it. Like everybody, all of the religious schools are 60 kids, like all of them. So, and part of that is the birth rate, right? So my first, I worked with Rabbi Sandy Eisenberg Sasso. I worked mostly with her husband, Rabbi Dennis Sasso, the first male-female rabbinic couple that we know of. And she was the third woman rabbi in the world. And she said that in the 80s, they wrote an article about how we really needed to do zero population growth for the health of the planet. And I said, that's one thing that the Jews, we achieved, man. Like, so, yeah, it's a question. And I think also though, because, you know, I have rambunctious kids, it doesn't take that many kids to then create a lot of good kid energy.
Someone else had, David, did you? No.
Are we ready for seconds?
Well, no, because Robin Hurwitz has a question. Okay, 1 second, Robin has a question. I'll get to you in 1 second.
So it's kind of a two-part broad question, right? You talked about korban, meaning sacrifice and approach. I'd like you to reflect on, well, first I should say thank you for coming. Service last night and today. So if you could critique the service, your engagement, your involvement, the participation of the congregation that was here, what that felt like for you, and how you can bring in the ideas of approachment and sacrifice, and what that would mean. How do you get more people engaged, whether they're here or not? Like some of us have kids, some of us have college-age kids, some of us have parents that aren't coming here. How do you approach them? How do you get them engaged in being Jewish?
Okay, so good luck with that, Tony, right? You know, they eliminated the essays on the SATs. So just saying. Okay,
They did.
yeah,
They did.
they did, yeah, it's back to mobile.
For now.
Okay, so I'm trying. I think what Robin is saying is kind of how do you engage folks and feel closeness with a very varied congregation where you have people with little kids, people with college kids, people with older kids, grandchildren who are in college. And what, from what you've seen the last 2 days, what might be your approach? Is that pretty good?
Yes.
Oh, and what would you do differently?
What would you do differently?
Right, oh, well, I can't say the differently right yet. Or I didn't, I mean, I was mostly looking at, you know, me getting into the flow. So I feel like, you know, the first year is about for the new rabbi is just getting into the flow of the place. But I think the question that you're asking is, you know, family members, people that you know who you'd like them to express their Jewishness by coming into the synagogue and being part of services. And so I would say, I heard a rabbi and friend of mine who is a conservative rabbi and leads a very large conservative congregation. And he said, you know, you think that people should come because it's Shabbos, and this is what we do. You come on Shabbos. So it's what we do in this room, but I think the folks who are not in this room or not on Zoom, they really need a reason. What is the reason? And that's not a failing. That's different people have different styles. And so I'm always trying to think of what is the reason to come this week? And so building into services, you know, a theme or you know, special food and kiddush. So I would say, you know, you guys are doing great on the food, but also. Okay. Oh, it's not typical, it's special. And I was also say the theme this weekend is me. But I think, yeah, thinking about if we want to get more kids here, then a group of families with kids all have to decide to come on the same weekend. And so we can help seed that. And then also looking at different demographic folks and starting to, we make a plan that we're gonna make the reason, and then we try to implement it.
I'm sorry, I wasn't clear.
Okay.
There are plenty of people that are members or member families, let's say, that don't come to services, and that's fine that they don't come to services. How do we approach that? How would you see?
Oh, so what are the other things
Like,
to
are
do?
you looking at approaching them? Are you thinking that maybe there are sacrifices that they would need to make? Would there be sacrifices that you would need to make? Or how would you build that relationship so that we can expand the community that we currently have, our membership, if you will,
Mhm.
and engage our membership, or see that they're engaged?
Okay. So first, let's backtrack. We have the best kiddushes in town. I want to say that, okay? And I will say that 26 years ago, when my husband and I, and at that point it was just my son who was little, we came here for the first time, and it would have been Josh Raven's bar mitzvah, right? And it was a great kiddush, and I'll admit, it was really nice not to have to cook a meal for people who didn't want to eat anything I ever cooked. And that's why we joined Beth Israel. Okay? Right? That's why we joined. True, it's true. Okay. Okay, no, stop. Okay. So Robin's actual question, apparently I translated incorrectly, was how about the people who never, and then we're going to have one question after this. Haven't forgotten, okay? What about the people who don't come to synagogue? We're not being critical of them. They don't come to synagogue. How do you engage them? Would that be correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there are a lot of different ways to be Jewish. And so the religious spiritual piece and the cultural food piece are taken care of, you know, by services. And we have to think about what are the other pieces. So I love music, food, intellectual intellectual stimulation and ideas, arts and culture. And so I think there is in Baltimore Jewish culture that all of us can access, and maybe we can create experiences where we access it together. And as I would learn who are the regular Shabbat goers and who are the folks who are, it's important for them to be members, but the Shabbat services aren't their thing. It's the same process of figuring out, asking them, what is their thing and how can we do it together? One of the reasons that I'm a rabbi is that I want to push against the individualism and the isolation that we are all pushing against. So I also, I'm a community organizer. I like being a rabble rouser. And it's actually very easy. It's so easy to be a rabble rouser when all you have to do is say community is important. Let's create deep relationships with each other so that we can have meaningful lives together and protect each other in this chaotic world. So I think my question to the folks who it's important for them to be members and they want to do something else, let's do that as a community. Let's all, go on a field trip together.
Last question.
How do you feel about encouraging members of the congregation to be more participatory in the service? Because that's what drew me here, and that's what keeps me here, is that I have that ability at certain parts of the year to actually give a Devar Torah, and other people read Torah, and other people, do the Haftorah. So how do you feel about that, and what would you do?
So the question is, and I also said this the last question, not to be the boss of anybody, but the time is, ending. The question is, what would you do that here at Beth Israel, we do have the opportunity, unlike many synagogues, to very much participate, for example, give a Devar Torah and other things. And what would you do to continue that?
So I love listening and learning to other folks' Divrei Torah. I love lots of folks reading Torah, and I would see my role as supporting that. And so if someone has never given a Devar Torah before, maybe it's intimidating. So we would meet together, we would study, and I would help, pull out the ideas. I would help the person craft a Devar Torah. I love doing that. I love doing it when I'm working with B'nai Mitzvah students and their parents. And I'm open and happy to, have that be a learning relationship with adults as well. I also, in the last year, I think I got 5 or 6 new people to learn how to lane. Only I will admit that only a couple of them will be regular, but I already have increased the readership roles at my current congregation because I said many times, and then finally people took me up on it, that I'm happy to teach people to lane. So I love singing, I love laning. I grew up, this is another piece of my Jewish journey. I grew up in a Reform congregation, and I think one of the gifts of the Reform cantorate is that they are very systematic about teaching laning, and so I learned in a very systematic way, and I enjoy teaching it.
So as a rebel rouser,
Yes.
would you be willing to stay up all night, create a program where we stay up all night and study Erev Shavuot?
Shavuot, sure, if people are going to be here with me.
So, I have to say, Sita, I want to thank everyone for coming. This is wonderful. Thank you. Goldman. Thank you to everyone there who are here on Zoom. And please, if you can, come to Abdallah tonight, come to Minyan tomorrow morning. And again, let's do everything we can to welcome. What time?
5:45.
No, that's only the search.
No, no.
So to.
Havdalah's at 7:30.
Desserts at 7:30.
Okay, so a lot of people are talking to me at once.
I heard it.
Okay, let me just, 1 minute. Everyone's yelling at me at once, okay? Kind of feel like I'm back at Camp Airy again. Okay. Tonight is Havdalah at 7:30, dessert reception, and then Havdalah is at 8:30, but if you want dessert, you come at 7:30. What are you saying to me? Everyone's telling me something.
Dessert at 7:30.
Get here at 7:30, there'll be dessert and then Havdalah, okay? How about that? Tomorrow, right here in the chapel, Minyan at 9 o'clock, okay? Anything else, did I say? Oh, please, you all got an email, let us know your thoughts. So before 5 o'clock Sunday.
5 o'clock Sunday.
Okay, and again, thank you to Rabbi Goldman, and I think we all learned quite a bit this evening. I don't know what we do. Somebody needs to do some tough crowd. You expected it different?
Great, me too.
She was easy. She was easy. No. No, I know. Yes. So, anyway. I'll listen to you. She bought it. But I never made that mistake. That's the part that's happening. Okay. It's not a two.
Right, right. I mean, I think, you know, that's.
What about after?
This is the best. I don't want to. Right, I mean, and that Neil, last week was talking, that's what it's. Top down. Yeah.
Were you here last night? How'd it go? I wasn't here last night. Well, we know how we actually have diversity. But yeah, I mean, you know how she handles things like that. It didn't throw her off. Otherwise.
And it's funny. Dessert at 7:30. Sorry. This was the last part. This is the first part. We shut down on Friday. And the very next day. We all. Alright. Yeah. I didn't think it. And we called. Was there? No.
Why would you ask about the Sinai when the surgery you have been completed? Oh, come on. Don't overwhelm me. I'm going to finish the sentence. Yeah. Yeah, well, Joe, what? You may be on one side of the aisle, you know? Joe Roth, when I was at the convention, East Coast Convention, Joe Roth was was upset that we had electronic keys. to open our door on Shabbat. It was a brilliant, idea. I don't think we can find Jews. It's Thank God, we live in a country where each have our own opinion. And we don't get shot. You know what, Alaska? So good.